What is the secret of the fakirs of the East? What gives them the power to defy the pain of hooks and spikes? How can people walk unharmed on red-hot coals? Why do so few suffer agonizing burns? In the West, these Californians are hoping to walk on fire. They believe the power of the mind will keep them safe. But is faith enough? Is there more they should know before they take their first step onto the fire? Mysteries from the files of Arthur C. Clarke, scientist, writer and visionary. The scientist who invented the communications satellite, the writer of 2010, and now in retreat in Sri Lanka, the visionary who ponders the riddles of this and other worlds.
This is Katragama, perhaps the holiest place in Sri Lanka and one of the great shrines of the world. It's sacred to Hindus, Muslims and Buddhists, and throughout the year, pilgrims come to make offerings at the temple and to bathe in the Manik Ganga. For 2 weeks every August, Katragama is an extraordinary sight, thronged with crowds of pilgrims undergoing painful ordeals to atone for past misdeeds. Some walk here for miles on shoes of nails. Others pierce their flesh with hooks and spikes.
The crowds come from all over Sri Lanka to honor Skanda, the Katragama god. Those who make the pilgrimage of pain believe that the greater their suffering, the more the god will look on them with favor. To onlookers, these feats of faith look unbearably painful. But strangely, the pilgrims who perform them don't really seem to be in agony. They're convinced Skanda protects them with a supernatural power. Putting such miracles under the microscope is the speciality of physiology professor Carlo Fonseca. He studied the strangest of all the Katragama rituals, hook hanging.
Many people believe that this is in fact miracle because on the face of it there are several fantastic things about the whole procedure. But I have looked into this rather carefully and I'm quite convinced that it can be explained in terms of physics and physiology.
At the Colombo Medical Faculty, this volunteer hook hanger has been helping Fonseca's investigations. The experiment is strictly supervised by the doctors. Each hook is sterilized to keep infection at bay, for hook hanging is dangerous. Fonseca first set out to discover why the hooks cause so little bleeding. He found that the trick is to pinch up the hanger's skin.
If you watch how they actually do it, the skin and the underlying tissues are pinched up. Pinching up tissues obliterates the blood vessels in the region. The hook is inserted and tension is maintained on the hook by means of a string so that it remains pinched up.
But why don't the hooks tear the hangers back? Fonseca realized that the number of hooks was crucial. There must be enough to spread the load.
Hook hangers use at least 6 hooks, and these 6 hooks are so placed that there is an even distribution of the weight. This young man, he is about 120 pounds in weight. So each hook has a strain of 120 divided by 6, that's 20 pounds. And such a strain, normal, healthy human tissues can bear without snapping. On the other hand, if any devotee hangs by one hook, undoubtedly the hook will tear through the flesh and he will plummet to the ground.
Yet this does not fully explain why the hooks cause so little pain. Fonseca concluded that mental attitude is the key, that for devotees, ecstasy is a powerful anesthetic, but that this experiment shows religious belief is not necessary. For this man's happy to hang about and smoke, putting his faith in science instead of the supernatural. To Carlo Fonseca, his calm behavior proves the point.
Yes, this is a manifestation of his lack of faith in religious ritual. He needs no divine aid of any kind to do this. This is entirely of his own steam.
So effective is the pinching up procedure that even when the hooks are taken out, the wounds do not bleed. And Fonseca believes the same elementary principles of physics and physiology protect even the devotees at Kataragama.
The climax of the festival is a firewalk on the final day. To a mere spectator, it's amazing to see the pilgrims walking on red-hot coals with their bare feet. There's no doubt that they do walk on fire. Why don't they get burnt? Why do they feel no pain?
At Kataragama, dozens of pilgrims brave the fire pit. They believe the heat will purge their sins. The temperature of the coals, measured by skeptical scientists, reaches 800 degrees centigrade. Yet men and women stroll across them without blisters or burns. In the South Pacific, islanders amble regularly over roasting rocks. And on Bora Bora, curiosity impelled a surgeon to risk his skin. Dr. Gerald Fegan.
It was a pretty formidable looking thing. It was just a long bed of incandescent red rocks. Anyway, I found myself leaning down, taking off my shoes and socks, and walking over to the front of the firewalk. And one of the natives took my hand, and it felt so hot when you got close to it that you felt you were being fried. And yet, when you walked on it, your feet and your knees, up to your knees, felt cold. I have no explanation for it at all. I can explain a lot of medical things, but not that.
But one American group claims it can explain the firewalking mystery. At the Insight Center on Wilshire Boulevard in Santa Monica, the answer costs only $100. A firewalk is the climax of a seminar designed to boost people's confidence and help them conquer their fears. Instructor Tony Robbins believes positive thinking is all that's needed.
I've taken 3,500 people across the coals in the last 8 months alone, everything from a 7-year-old boy to a 78-year-old man. In that time, I've also seen people who had burned, and they all had equal thickness of skin. They all had equal supposed perspiration. The difference was when that person's thinking was. How are they thinking and what were their belief systems? So this process teaches them how to align their beliefs to get whatever they want out of their life. And the firewalk is just a symbol, a practical example of what they can do.
The students spend 4 hours psyching themselves up to face the fire. One technique is to shout "cool moss" to convince themselves their feet won't burn.
1, 2, 3.
The fire is almost ready, and so are the firewalkers. All they need is belief.
As I take the first step. My body will do. Whatever it takes. To protect itself. As I take the first step. My body will do. Whatever it takes. To protect itself.
Take a look at the coals. Aren't they pretty? Look at the coals right now, and as you look at them, make your fist, breathing like you would. What will you say? That's right. I can do it. That's right, you can. Come forward. Come forward. At your own pace. All right. Cool moss, 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 cool moss.
At the medical faculty in Colombo, a series of experiments has convinced Professor Fonseca that there's more to firewalking than positive thinking.
There is a lot of claptrap and mumbo-jumbo associated with this phenomenon. I have looked into this very carefully, and as of now, I am quite convinced that the whole phenomenon is explicable in terms of quite elementary physics and physiology.
Well, of course, we're not the first to do this kind of experiment. Many other doctors and scientists have tried this and come up with a rather wide range of clues to the firewalking mystery.
Harry Price was one of the first. In 1935, he organised this firewalk at Carshalton in Surrey. He burned 8 tons of oak and pine in a 25-foot trench. After several hours, the logs were burning fiercely. The heat was intense. Kashmiri Khuda Bux was the subject of the experiment. He'd done the firewalk many times. The doctor confirmed that Bux's feet showed no signs of special preparation. An amateur quickly came to grief, but Khuda Bux survived both walks unsinged.
Harry Price did remarkably well and learned a great deal from his experiments. His main conclusions were fasting and trances were completely unnecessary. Secondly, the feet required no special preparation. Finally, he noticed that the walker's feet never stayed in contact with the coals for more than half a second. One theory is that firewalkers wet their feet, which would cool them and help to quench the fire. But there may be more to it than that, as this experiment may demonstrate. I have a hot plate here. It's fairly warm, and I'm going to sprinkle a little water onto it. And you see the drops quickly spread out and evaporate. But if this plate is really hot, something quite different happens. Now the hot plate is really hot, almost glowing. And I'm going to sprinkle some water. Now see what happens. It forms a little bead and skitters around like a tiny hovercraft, floating on a cushion of steam which protects it from the heat of the hot plate. And it can survive for many seconds, sometimes as long as a minute. This is called the Leidenfrost effect. And an American scientist, Dr. Gerald Walker of Ohio, thinks that this explains the firewalking phenomenon and has put the matter to the test personally.
I've got 2 layers of socks on my feet and some cellophane inside the socks. I'm trying to trap the sweat inside on my feet. And I'm hoping that the sweat, boy, this whole area is really hot. I'm hoping that the sweat will do 2 things for me. Part of the sweat will help quench part of the coals that I touch when I walk across these hot coals, and I'll get a little bit of dead ash. And I hope some of the other sweat might give me some Leidenfrost effect, where I get a little bit of vapor layer between the hot coals and my skin. I'm going to sit down. Even the chair is extremely hot. But I'm very quickly going to take off my shoes and socks and this piece of cellophane and walk right across. I've got to do it very quickly so that the kind of a little breeze through the area doesn't evaporate all the sweat off my feet before I have a chance to get across the coals. And boy, am I scared. I just hope that there's enough protection, Leidenfrost effect, and a little bit quenching of the fire to make this work. I'll do this very quickly. Both layers, cellophane, and here we go. A little bit of heat in a few places, but no massive damage at all. Leidenfrost effect helped protect my feet, a little bit of vapor layer, and probably quenched a little bit of the fire as I went across. I don't have thick calluses to protect my feet, just a kind of tender little skin there, and it was physics that protected my feet. But boy howdy, don't do this for yourself, because this is extremely dangerous. You can do massive damage to yourself, and it's just not worth that kind of damage to your feet. But that's the Leidenfrost effect in action.
If wet feet are the key to firewalking, what about the sad case of Methodist minister Eric Robinson? Here in Sri Lanka in 1952, he carefully soaked his feet, then jumped on the coals. He was badly burned. It was like animals tearing at my feet, he said.
The state of the firewalkers' feet may be part of the answer. Carlo Fonseca has been finding out how long they can withstand the heat from an electric light bulb. He's invented this apparatus to study their soles.
I take the foot of the firewalker and I place it and switch the light on. Simultaneously, I start the stopwatch. I have good evidence, obtained mainly by using this apparatus, that rough, thick, cold, wet, and dirty soles are much more resistant to heat than soles with the opposite characteristics. He kept it for as long as 85 seconds. That is because he is a habitually unshod person and his soles are quite thick. You have to feel them to actually believe how thick they are. A soft foot, this boy, he's 15 years old. He belongs to the younger generation, and so they are usually shod all the time, and the feet are quite soft. Keep his foot on, heat source, start this. Well, that was only 5 seconds. So if he does firewalking, he'll have to traverse the fire pretty fast.
In West Germany, yet another theory is being tested. It springs from new discoveries about the workings of the brain.
Oh, jetzt kippt der andere Seite. Das war schlecht. Das ist egal. Ah ja.
The experimenters come from the University of Tübingen.
Genau, es ist gefährlich. Ja. So,
All they get for their pains is a slice of apple strudel.
walking without pain over the fire.
The man in charge is an expert on pain, Dr. Wolfgang Labig. He wired up an Indian fakir to an EEG machine to study his brainwaves. Transfixed by spikes through chest, throat and tongue, he produced special slow waves called theta rhythms, usually found only in deep sleep. So can fakirs put their brains to sleep to kill pain? And can firewalkers do the same?
Now we will see if you, as an untrained person, will develop the same rhythms which are connected with not feeling pain, because I have the theory that this slowing of the EEG will mean that the pain perception would be reduced.
Dr. Miltner is wired up to the EEG, and when he walks on the fire, any theta rhythms will be recorded via his radio transmitter.
I hope I can control the pain impulses and the heat impulses. I will show you.
Rausgehen.
Next morning, at his lab in the University of Tübingen, Dr. Labig analyzes the recordings, searching for theta rhythms.
Let us see if we can find some theta rhythm. Here is a developing theta rhythm. It's mixed up with alpha, but it's a beginning theta activity. So what we have learned from our experiment last day are even untrained person can develop theta rhythm so that they can switch off their pain perception in firewalking.
In Colombo, the fire is ready at last. But first, to show they have no supernatural protection, the walkers deliberately flaunt local religious laws, downing liquor and chewing pork. Instead, they have learned to put their faith in science. They accept that a combination of factors will take them safely through the fire.
Right.
Speed across the coals, the rough skin on the soles of their feet, sweat, and the mysterious theta rhythms that seem to banish pain.
Right. Okay.
Even the professor practices what he preaches.
I don't pretend we have all the answers, but I'm sure we have most of them. There's nothing supernatural involved in firewalking. Well, if I'm such an authority on firewalking, am I going to try it myself? In the immortal words of Eliza Doolittle, not likely. I'm content to leave it to the real experts, and so should you.
Tomorrow at 7:30, Arthur C. Clarke explores spiritualism, asking whether we can really communicate with the dead. Next tonight, The Professionals.